from the very beginning, I was told you got to advocate for yourself every day now. You've got to advocate for yourself. Well, I didn't know what that meant. Gradually, I came to understand that I just had to, I couldn't be passive in terms of how my life was going to be managed. I had to have a voice in it. Otherwise, people would do it for me. And whether they did it right or wrong, they would ignore me. Because people, again, maybe it's people's discomfort with understanding someone who's injured like this, but people tend to want to or assume that you're not capable of really anything. So they want to speak for you. They want to do for you. They want to jump in before you have a chance to do it yourself. And if you don't say anything, they'll do it.
I kind of depended on my parents to advocate for me, and I struggled speaking up for myself, and which was weird for me. I never, even before this, I never looked at my parents as a 22-year-old and asked them, will you answer that, So I think I had a couple people that pushed me and told me that I had to advocate for myself and kind of just put me out there. And and I even voiced my care to my parents, them being my caregivers. I have to remind them of stuff, that they forget. And sometimes I forget and they have to remind me. But
so what is advocacy? Advocacy is being able to represent yourself, your beliefs, and also your wants within the community.
You are making your needs known. Let's say you go to your favorite restaurant, and ideally, it would be better if they had this set up so that you could get to let's say they have a buffet, that you could get to the buffet if they would raise it just a little bit or have some of the items a little bit closer to you. And you go to the manager, because you've been going there for a long time, say, listen, I have an idea. It would make it easier for people like me if you could change the buffet a little bit and make it more accessible so I don't have to ask you guys for help. It may be that, let's say that you're in a work environment and you go to your boss and say, you know what? It would really be easier for me to work if I had Jim's office because it's much more open and it's closer to the bathroom. Is there any way that maybe we could change so I could do my job more effectively? Because if I do my job more effectively, then we all win in the end. So advocacy is about putting yourself out there, but putting yourself out there in the way that's not going to be aggressive toward people, but you're asserting yourself. You're saying, this is what I need. Also, and this is how we could accomplish this. So you're coming with a request, but you're also coming with a solution.
I think a lot of it has to do with vulnerability. A lot of people don't like being vulnerable. Most people don't like being vulnerable, right? And I think asking for help is a way of showing vulnerability in a way.
The fear with advocating for yourself is not wanting to offend people that you need help from. Because many times you are in a position where you need their help or could use their help one way or the other. And you don't want to offend people and push people away by coming on too strong. But at the same time, you're trying to find the right balance of how to explain to them what you need and how you need it. Then there's that frustration because a lot of times, depending on what you need, they might not get it anyway. They still don't quite get it. One of the hardest things to this very day, even though I don't need help transferring, but I have friends and a caregiver to this day that when I'm transferring, still jump in and try to grab my legs or my arms. And I don't know how many times I got to tell people don't grab my arms. I'm like that, but can't you tell I'm using this for balance? But people do it, and you don't want to offend them, and you don't want to, they're doing it out of kindness and concern for you. So you don't want to bite people's head off because, I've had that experience too where I have bitten people's head off about helping me. Then I feel bad afterwards. So I think you hold back sometimes from advocating because you don't want people to not want to help you at some point when you do really need it.
So I think it's really normal to feel anxious when you're trying to advocate for yourself for the first time, and even practicing with someone or a loved one in the family before trying out. I think it'll take the edge off, but it's still, there's anxiety still going to be there. This is a new situation for you. This is a new situation in terms of your body, how you present yourself and how you carry yourself in the community. So I think practice will take some of the anxiety away, but in terms of proceeding and actually doing this, I think the anxiety will be there, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's really normal. I think before the injury, any sort of new situation or something that's foreign to us as humans, we're always going to have some fear around it until we go through it. And I think the first time you go through it, you're going to be like, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. Or, hey, I didn't handle it the best way, so maybe I can figure out another way to make it less worse or not bad around the next time around.
Nobody's going to know what you need unless you put itself out there. I ask for what I need. If I go to the grocery store and I'm going down the aisle, this just happened to me the other day, I cannot reach anything on the top shelf because I'm not very tall. And so I just wait till I see a tall person coming down the aisle and I ask them, can you get that for me? If I spend too much time in my head about having to figure out how somebody's going to feel if I ask for help, I make it more of a big deal than really what it is. That interaction that I had with that person, they forget about it by the time they're down the next aisle. The reality is, if you're making more of a big deal about it, then you're probably spending a lot of time in your head that's unnecessary. Most people are willing to help out, but most people don't know how to help out unless you ask them for that.
The catheter, my suprapubic tube, and if it's ever clogged or kinked, I start experiencing autonomic dysreflexia, and it's something that you might not physically see, and I think that just me telling them how my symptoms are, if I feel tingly, or for me, my hands get really cold, and that's something that they can't physically see, that I have to voice to them. And it's very important because your blood pressure can spike and you would be at risk for a stroke. And I have to tell them when I feel that way. And there was one incident where I waited too long and my blood pressure was very, very high, and I had to realize that, and the next time it happened, I had to be quicker about it, and that was on me. That's nothing that they can, do, because it's not physically, you can't see it. So
I think that's a great question in terms of how to advocate for people that you're really familiar with and close to. What I've done with patients before is get a piece of paper, divide into 3 columns, have the therapy team, right, tell what is something you do by yourself, whether it's transfers, bathing, eating. Something, the column in the middle is what you share with your loved one or your care partner. And then something in the last column, third one, would be something that's completely up to your caregivers. When you have that visual, it helps assert what you can do for yourself. It helps communicate what you need help with. And then also there's, I think, more clarification and less sort of haziness of where everyone's role is in terms of your health. Let's give an example of transfers. How much help do you need or assistance do you need with a transfer? If someone is hovering consistently over you with you when you're doing a slide board transfer or depression and this is not really needed, you might want to say, hey, would you mind just taking a step back and letting me try this out? I understand you're worried about my safety, that I could get hurt, but if you're okay with it, let me just try it out once to see if I'm able to do this transfer. You're asking for permission for that person, right? You're acknowledging they're coming from a good place. And then 3, you're still saying, like, let me try this. If there's any sort of hiccups, of course, you guys are going to communicate and see if you can problem solve it differently. If that person is able to see you did it flawlessly, you proved your point, you advocated, and maybe the next time around, they're not hovering over you.
Yeah, so the other day we walk into a restaurant and it's all high tops, it's sports grill, a lot of TVs around. And they tell us there's no table for me to sit at. And you just kind of have to make it well known, right? There's no alternative. I can't sit at a high top. I've got to have a table that fits my needs. And there's ADA laws in place for that. And there's things that are in place for people in my situation to make everybody's lives easier. They wound up asking the family to move, and most people are pretty understanding, right? They look over, they see that I'm in a wheelchair, and it's not really possible for me to get into a high top, so they have no problem moving most of the time.
So I've had many instances where, me being, trying to be soft-spoken and not, speak out, I end up in a worse situation because I didn't say, no, that's not how you handle me. Great example is going to a hairdresser salon one time. I had never been to this salon before, and I was finally wanting to get my hair done at a normal salon, like a normal person. And so he was able to wash my hair in the shampoo bowl from my chair. But he wanted me to get in the dryer seat. And the dryer seat was low, and I couldn't transfer from there. And I don't even think I had my slide board with me. So he decided, I could just lift you, because I was trying to ask him to assist me with the transfer. I thought I could hop it, and as long as he helped stabilize me. And I remember saying, grab around my hips, don't grab my arms. I need my arms for balance. And this fool still grabbed my arms, and then he yanks me up, and I'm kind of dangling. Another person comes rushing over, grabs my legs. My pants are coming down. My shoe came off, and I ended up kind of splayed in the dryer seat chair, completely mortified and embarrassed. Everybody in the shop is eyes wide open, but they don't want to say anything because they're this is embarrassing. I mean, then they try to help me get my pants up. They don't know how to pull pants up. It was a miserable experience. I wanted to leave right then, but that was a lesson learned for me. People don't know what they're doing. And you got to you can't just soft-spokenly say, no, well, can you help me by just taking my... No, you have to stop folks because they will get you jacked up.
Our home is our comfort zone, and I think once you step out of it, that's when you start kind of getting those fears of how am I going to carry myself and also assert myself in terms of what I want and what I prefer. I often hear from patients, they'll go out to a grocery store or a restaurant, and people put their hands on their chair and try helping them. And that gets so frustrating, and it becomes also very, I think, objectifying, right? You are no longer that person who's in control of their environment and what you would want to proceed with in that environment. And people say, how do I go about talking to that person in that community when they're doing something that I don't appreciate? So I always say, well, can we figure out some key phrases that we can use in that situation that you always go to and practice that? And so one thing might be, would you mind taking a step back? I actually can do this. If I needed help, I would ask you. That's one possibility. Or saying, hey, I really appreciate your help. Don't need it. Thank you anyway. And continue rolling about your day. So there are certain key phrases I would tell you to kind of start thinking about and putting in your back pocket. Another thing, a lot of my patients are really shy. They're not very assertive. So how do you proceed in that? When before the injury, you didn't even talk to strangers. So I say this is where you find your allies. You find people who will step up and say something on your behalf. Those are always the good things to find out, and find those people who are able to kind of communicate your needs and wants if you're unable to. So oftentimes once you leave a facility, right, you are in charge of your health and ongoing doctor's appointments. And I think one of the biggest assumptions is that all doctor's appointments or healthcare buildings are wheelchair accessible. That is actually not true. What you need to do to advocate for yourself is call ahead. Ask them if there is any way of accessible points of entry, whether it's ramps or elevators to get in. Once you get in, you might want to also ask, how is the office set up? Is it still big enough for a wheelchair? And number two, if you need to get on a table for examination, are there any ways to get on that table? So those are kind of the things you want to take a look at when thinking about medical appointments and advocating for yourself. When you do talk to medical healthcare professionals, I think oftentimes you feel like they are the know-it-all in terms of your care and also your spinal cord injury. More likely than not, you're probably going to educate them about your injury and what your needs and wants are or your concerns are. So I think that's really important. to know what are your concerns, what are your questions, and some people might not be able to answer that, and that's something you might want to push back and say, would you be willing to talk to your colleague or follow up with me about these questions? One way to advocate for yourself. Number two, if you feel uncomfortable doing that, having someone else with you and bringing in a list of your concerns and questions is totally normal. Having that ally in your corner for healthcare appointments is, I think, really important, especially something that's so detrimental, that could be detrimental to your health.
So first advice I would give for anybody who uses any type of mobility device, I would definitely say when you are applying for a job, go ahead and check the box that says you do have a disability. It already puts the people who are hiring you already on alert. So the moment you roll into the door, it's not anything that they should be surprised of. And one of the advices I like to give is when you're answering interview questions, you answer interview questions to show how you overcome your disability or how you are able to manage despite your disability. So for example, if you're quadriplegic, more often than not, being able to type on the computer will be difficult. But when they ask you, okay, well, you want to be an administrative assistant and it requires you to type on a document, you prove to them that despite your disability, you can do it. So you can say, I use Dragon Naturally Speaking, or I use my cell phone to type. You justify or you show that just because you have a disability doesn't mean the job won't get done. And I feel as if as long as you are able to display that, that job is yours.
So I remember having a meeting before I started work with my boss, the HR accommodations person, and I think a couple of other people, and I had someone with me. But very quickly, the advocate that was there with me, I think her name was Debbie, she came with me, but very quickly, I didn't need her to say much else. No, I need this. No, I need that. I pushed for the handicap buttons to be, because we worked behind secure doors, but those doors I couldn't open. So I pushed for the security buttons to be installed, or the handicap button to be installed with the doors. They installed it on every floor that I needed to access. They didn't install it throughout the building, but you can't get everything. I pushed for a bigger office. I said I needed bigger office space with a sofa in case I wanted to lay down. And I got my sofa. I was like, I need the dictation software on my computer because I can't type, but I can, dictate. So they purchased the dictation software, and I even, and this is a rare one, I was able to negotiate shorter hours, even though I was still full-time. So I did not have to work full days. And that was a real blessing because in the beginning, I got exhausted so quickly.
Anytime that it comes to being able to do your job, you can request for accommodations. The Americans with Disability Act has given every person with a disability the right to ask for reasonable accommodation when it comes to work. So if you feel as if you're moving at a slower pace or you need extra breaks throughout the day, it's okay to request that from your employer. That request can be as formal or informal as possible. I would always advise putting it in writing so that it can be used later for any reason that you feel as if your accommodations weren't upheld. And when it comes to the ADA, the key word is reasonable. So be mindful of the accommodations you're asking for from your employer, because they also have the right to say, that's unreasonable. You are requiring us to acquire a hardship. So I would definitely say consult with your doctor, vocational therapist, whoever may be in your clinical team to be able to help you formulate what may be reasonable for you to be able to return to work and be able to do your job as best as you can.
For additional resources, please visit our website.